I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. I was living in Louisiana at the time. I had been planning a long road trip to Austin, Texas, to meet some old friends from college. It had been years since we'd all been in the same room together, and I was excited, maybe even a little nostalgic. The drive was long, 8 straight hours on the highway, through stretches of empty road, broken only by small towns and endless fields. By the time I finally saw the lights of Austin on the horizon, my body felt stiff and my mind heavy from the monotony of the trip. After catching up with my friends in the city, I realized I still had one more stop to make. My old buddy Tom. We'd grown up together, but life had pulled us apart. Last I heard, he had moved about an hour outside of Austin into a quiet little town most people never paid attention to. So before heading back home, I called him. To my surprise, he picked up right away. His voice was warm, familiar, like no time had passed at all. He told me to come by, that he'd love to see me. The sun was already sinking as I drove out of Austin toward his place. The roads grew narrower, the houses farther apart. By the time I reached his street, night had fallen, and a heavy stillness hung over the neighborhood. Tom's house was old, 2 stories, with wood siding that looked weathered by years of Texas heat and storms. A single porch light glowed dimly against the dark, guiding me in. Tom greeted me at the door with a grin and a hug, like we were kids again. He looked older, sure, lines around his eyes, a little gray in his beard, but it was still Tom. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and something else. Maybe dust, maybe age. The living room was cozy but cluttered. Old books stacked on end tables, a couple of half-burned candles on the mantel. We settled in quickly, talking about everything and nothing, pouring glasses of whiskey that never seemed to stay full for long. Hours slipped by as the warmth of alcohol loosened our tongues, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had my friend back. But as the night dragged on, I realized just how tired I was. My head was heavy, my words slurred. Driving home wasn't an option. That's when Tom offered the guest room. I didn't think twice. I wish I had. Tom led me upstairs. The house creaked under our steps, the kind of deep groans only old wood makes. At the end of the hall, he opened a door to a small room. "It's nothing fancy," he said, almost apologetically. The guest room was plain, a bed against the wall, a nightstand with a dusty lamp, and a small dresser pushed beneath a single window. The wallpaper was faded, peeling at the corners, with a pale floral pattern that might have been cheerful once, decades ago. But there was something about the room that felt different. Heavier, maybe. I brushed it off. Whiskey and exhaustion were clouding my mind. Tom wished me good night, and I collapsed into the bed. The sheets were cool, the pillow stiff but welcoming after the long drive. Within minutes, I was drifting. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. The room was silent, still. But then, in the corner, by the closet door, I noticed something. A long, black shape. It looked like a coat. A tall coat, hanging from the closet door frame. Only I didn't remember seeing it when I walked in. I sat up, squinting in the dim glow of the moonlight seeping through the window. The shape was so still, so perfectly rigid, it didn't seem right. The longer I looked at it, the less it resembled a coat, and the more it resembled a person. Tall, thin, shoulders slumped forward. A head tilted slightly to the side, as if watching me. A chill ran through my body, but I forced myself to lie back down. It had to be a trick of the light. My tired brain playing games. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, telling myself not to look again. But sleep didn't come easy, and just when I thought I was finally drifting off, I heard it. A sound. Faint. Almost like fabric shifting. A soft rustle. I snapped my eyes open. The corner was empty. The coat, the shadowy figure, was gone. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the silence. The corner was empty. No coat. No shadow. Just a bare door with a small crack of darkness where the closet didn't quite shut. I sat up in bed, staring, waiting for my eyes to play another trick. But the space stayed empty. Slowly, I swung my legs off the mattress and stood. The wooden floor felt cold under my feet. I took one step toward the closet, then stopped. Why was I even moving closer? Something inside me screamed to leave it alone, to climb back in bed, pull the blanket over my head, and wait for morning. But another part of me, the stubborn, curious part, wouldn't let it go. I crept across the room. My hand trembled as I reached for the closet door. I paused, listening. The silence was so heavy I could hear my own breathing. With one quick motion, I pulled it open. Empty. Just old coats and boxes stacked against the wall. I exhaled sharply, almost laughing at myself. Of course it was nothing. Of course it was the whiskey. I shut the closet door and turned back toward the bed. That's when I heard it again. The rustle. But this time, it wasn't coming from the closet. It was coming from the hallway. I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the door to the hall. A thin line of faint yellow light shone beneath it, from the lamp Tom had left burning downstairs. Then, something moved. A shadow passed slowly across the crack of light. Something tall. Something walking. I woke again. This time it wasn't silence that greeted me. It was a sound. A dragging noise. Slow. Heavy. Like something being pulled across the floor. It wasn't coming from my room. It was coming from the hallway. I held my breath. Listened. It stopped. Then, another sound. The faint creak of a door. Long, deliberate, as if someone was trying not to be heard. I sat up in bed, my heart hammered. I whispered, "Tom?" No answer. The air in the room felt heavier, colder, and then it hit me. That wasn't Tom's bedroom door. It was the door downstairs. I slipped out of bed, feet pressing against the cold floor. Every instinct told me to stay put, but curiosity dragged me forward. Halfway to the door, I froze. Another noise. This one closer. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Not mine. I backed up, almost tripping into the nightstand. My shaking hand grabbed my phone, but I couldn't bring myself to turn on the light. Finally, I forced myself down the hall and knocked on Tom's door. He opened it, bleary-eyed, confused. "What the hell, man?" he muttered. I told him. The noises, the door, the breathing. His face went pale, and after a long silence, he whispered, "I've heard it too." Tom's words froze me. He had heard it too. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The house felt alive, like it was listening. Finally, Tom grabbed a flashlight. "Come on," he whispered. We crept down the hallway together. The floorboards groaned under our weight, though we tried to move silently. The beam of the flashlight shook in his hand. At the end of the hall stood the guest room. My room. The door was wide open. I swore I had closed it. Inside, the bed sheets were messy, twisted, as if someone had been lying there. But I hadn't moved since I left. Then we heard it. A faint click, like a latch being opened. The sound came from the closet. Tom slowly raised the flashlight. The beam landed on the door, and we saw it. The knob was turning, on its own. Tom froze. I couldn't breathe. The door creaked open an inch, then another. Darkness inside, swallowing the light. And then, a shape leaned forward. Tall, thin, head bent low, as if it couldn't fit through. Its outline shimmered, like smoke given form. The flashlight flickered. For a split second, its face came into view. Hollow eyes, a mouth too wide, and then darkness again. The closet slammed shut with a deafening bang. Tom dropped the flashlight. We didn't wait. We ran. We stood in the hallway, frozen. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than the house itself. Tom finally whispered, "We need to get out." I nodded, but my feet didn't move. Something about the air. It felt thicker, harder to breathe. Tom grabbed his keys from the counter. His hands were shaking so badly, the keys jingled like wind chimes in a storm. We started walking toward the front door. Every step echoed through the house, like the walls themselves were listening. Then, a sound, not loud, not sharp, just a soft creak, like a door upstairs slowly opening. Tom froze mid-step. I could see his chest rising and falling too fast. We didn't look at each other. We didn't have to. We both knew we weren't alone. For a moment, I thought maybe we should run. Just sprint out the front door. Leave everything behind. But then another thought crawled into my head. What if whatever is here is already waiting outside? My pulse hammered in my ears. Tom reached for the doorknob, his knuckles white. The metal clicked softly under his grip. And then, a whisper from upstairs. So faint, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But Tom heard it too. His eyes went wide, glassy with terror. "Did you hear that?" he mouthed. I nodded. The voice whispered again. Closer this time, a single word. "Stay." The word "stay" clung to the air like smoke. I felt it crawl across my skin, seeping under my clothes, into my chest. Tom's hand slipped from the doorknob. He staggered back a step, shaking his head, whispering, "No, no, this isn't real." But it was real. Too real. The floor above us groaned. Slow, deliberate footsteps, one after another, crossing the room, heading toward the staircase. My mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something. But my body betrayed me. I couldn't move. Tom whispered, "We have to go. Now." But before he could reach the door again, a shadow appeared at the top of the staircase, tall, thin, its edges blurred as if the darkness itself had peeled away from the walls and taken shape. It didn't walk. It just leaned forward, tilting its head in a slow, unnatural motion. Even from that distance, I felt its attention lock onto me. Not Tom, not the house, me. The whisper returned, but this time it wasn't in the air. It was inside my head. Stay with me. I couldn't look away. The shadow leaned further, its head tilting until it seemed impossible, like its neck was bending in ways a human's never could. Tom grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "Don't move," he whispered, as if speaking louder would break some fragile thread. Holding the thing in place, the air grew heavy. Breathing felt like inhaling water. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" But then, the shadow glided down one step, not walking, not even floating, just appearing closer each time I blinked. Step by step, closer, closer, Tom snapped. He yanked me toward the front door, fumbling with the lock. His hands shook so hard the metal rattled. Behind us, the whisper grew sharper, not one voice now. Dozens, overlapping, layered, all pressing into my skull at once. Stay, 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 stay. The lights flickered, the house groaned, and in that chaos I realized something that made my stomach drop. The whispers weren't begging us to stay. They were promising. We weren't leaving. The house was dead quiet. Tom and I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the guest room door. It had slammed shut on its own, hard enough to rattle the frame. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy as if someone else was inside. I whispered, "Tom, someone's in there." But Tom shook his head, pale as a sheet. "No, that's impossible." The sound moved, from the guest room to the hall closet, then across the floor above us. Each step echoed like it was pressing directly into my chest. We backed into the living room. The air grew heavy, thick, like breathing through wet cloth. And then, bang! The lights flickered. Every bulb in the house snapped on and off in violent pulses. From the corner of my eye, I saw it. A tall, black shape sliding along the wall. It didn't move like a person. It glided. Tom grabbed my arm. His hand was shaking uncontrollably. "We need to get out. Now." But the front door, it slammed shut before we even touched it. The house groaned, wood popping, windows rattling like something massive pressed in from all sides. The shadow figure stood now in the middle of the hallway, tall, unblinking, a smear of darkness that bent the air around it. And then came the whisper. Not from the figure, from everywhere. Low voices overlapping, muttering in words I didn't understand, rising and falling like 100 people breathing down my neck. Tom shouted, "Leave us alone!" But the thing didn't move. Instead, the whispering grew louder, closer until it was all I could hear. And then, without warning, every door in the house slammed open at once. We were trapped. I left Tom's house just as the first light of morning began to break. The air was heavy, damp, and still smelled faintly of whiskey and dust. I told myself the whole night had been a trick of the alcohol, my imagination, or maybe even a dream. But as I put my bags in the back seat of my car, something stopped me cold. On the passenger side window, there was a long, dark smear. Not dirt, not condensation. It looked like the imprint of a hand. A hand much larger than Tom's. Much larger than mine. I wiped it away quickly, refusing to think about it. But when I sat down in the driver's seat and turned the key, my stomach dropped. In the rearview mirror, in the faint reflection of the back seat, I swore I saw that same black figure, still, silent, watching. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty seat. My heart was racing, my hands trembling as I drove away. The house, Tom, the night, it all shrank behind me in the mirror. But that reflection, that moment, it never left me. And even now, years later, whenever I wake up in the middle of the night, I sometimes see it again, that tall black shape, standing quietly in the corner of my room, waiting.